7:45 p.m. 3 cheeseburgers, onion rings, ice cream. He had been waiting for this meal since he was 17. He ate every bite. 26 when Oklahoma killed him. One of the last juveniles ever put to death in America. That night, Scott Hain didn't speak, didn't explain, didn't apologize. This is what the final 24 hours look like when hope arrives too late to matter. Oklahoma State Penitentiary, H Unit, Oklahoma, United States. Fluorescent lights flickered awake with a cold hum spilling across walls that never softened, never changed. One cell, one man, Scott Hain, surrounded by reinforced concrete. A steel door sealed shut, heavy enough to end conversation with the world outside. No window, no horizon, no visual distance beyond the structure itself. The cell measured roughly 6 by 10 feet. Bare space, tight boundaries, enough room to stand, but never to feel free. Inside, a steel bunk bolted into the wall. A thin mattress laid across it, worn flat by time, stripped of comfort. A fused sink and toilet unit, cold and unyielding, pure function, nothing more. A place where waiting becomes routine. Outside the door, the corridor stretched in repetition. Identical cells, identical doors, identical silence between movements. Everything remained contained, and Scott Hain remained inside it. Only the weight of time pressing forward while everything else stood still. Then the walls faded, and memory arrived. Hain was 17. Robert Lambert was older. 2 names, 2 victims. One night that refused to stay buried. Years later, both sat beneath the same charge. Capital felony murder. For a split second, the space felt distant. Then everything settled into focus. Polished wood. Fixed gazes. A room built for conclusions that carry permanence. The prosecution had spent years rebuilding that night, piece by piece, decision by decision, until all of it pointed here. A charge that carried more than guilt, intent, consequence. This moment had been building long before today. 2 people drove away that night, 2 people didn't. Now every part of it was laid out, evidence presented, events reconstructed. The courtroom absorbed every detail. On one side, families carried absence, memories standing where presence once lived. Across from them, 2 men faced what they had set in motion. Stillness held the room together, a quiet pressure rising with every passing second. A decision that would define what remained of their lives. A courtroom deciding whether punishment ended with prison or ended with death. A day before the execution, a decision cut through the routine. The United States Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit granted a stay. Inside the Oklahoma State Penitentiary, the countdown stopped. For the first time in years, the end was no longer fixed. His thoughts stretched beyond the next day. Time opened. Then, without warning, it closed. The Supreme Court stepped in. The vote was 5-4, 5 justices, 4 dissenting. For a few brief hours, phones rang, lawyers worked, documents moved. Then one decision erased it. The stay was lifted. Inside the prison, the machinery started moving again. What had begun to take shape in his mind stopped mid-formation. There was no time to adjust, only the return of the inevitable. He had felt its grip loosen once. That made its return even heavier. The countdown resumed. This time it felt immediate. Beyond the razor wire, a different countdown was unfolding. Families of the victims had waited years for this day. Hearings, appeals, delays, reversals. Each challenge reopened wounds that never fully healed. Their countdown measured something else, not anticipation, resolution. Inside the prison, officers followed procedures practiced countless times before. Calm on the surface, precise in every movement. Yet procedure could not erase what everyone understood: the need to keep moving, while knowing where the process ends. The machinery continued to turn, the sentence continued its course, and Scott Hain moved with it, toward an ending written years earlier. The tray was set down and left there. Nothing was leading up to it. Nothing layered beneath it, only the meal he had chosen. 3 cheeseburgers, onion rings, ice cream, a slush drink. He glanced at it once, then leaned forward. Wrapper torn open. First bite taken, chewed, swallowed, repeated. His pace stayed level, unbroken, unhurried. Each movement followed the one before it without hesitation, as if nothing required attention beyond the next step. Grease collected on his fingers. The drink stayed cold beside him. His face didn't shift. The first burger disappeared, then the second, then the third. Onion rings came and went in between, quick enough to barely register, vanishing without effort. No change in rhythm, no pause between actions, just a continuation. The tray began to clear. Ice cream remained. He slowed slightly, smaller portions, longer gaps between motions, a brief adjustment in tempo, but nothing more. The cold faded as it was consumed. Soon there was nothing left. The meal was gone. The absence that followed wasn't marked by thought or reaction, only by the fact that there was nothing else to do. The tray sat empty in front of him, stripped of everything it had held. And when it was over, his hands stopped where they were. Not resistance, not thought, just nothing left to continue. His fingers stayed relaxed against the surface, as if the motion that had carried them until now had simply ended on its own. He didn't look down, didn't check what remained. His gaze stayed forward, unfocused, resting on nothing in particular. The room waited. Time stretched in small, quiet seconds. No shift in his posture, no change in his breathing. Whatever rhythm had guided him before had dissolved, leaving behind only stillness. There was space then, for a word, a reaction, anything that might follow. But it never came. His mouth didn't open, his expression didn't change. It wasn't resistance, it wasn't peace, just a man running out of future. It was something quieter than both, something that didn't ask to be explained. Footsteps arrived in measured rhythm. Keys followed. A pause, then closure. 9 years of arguments reduced to a single silence. Appeal after appeal, argument after argument. One claim stood above the rest. He was a juvenile when the crime was committed. Too young to be executed, it reached the highest level, the United States Supreme Court. They refused to hear it. No explanation, no delay, just silence. And with that, the final door slammed shut. And in the end, he offered nothing to it. His mouth stayed closed. His hands didn't move. Nothing broke the quiet all the way through. The door opened. Routine fell away in that instant. Scott Hain lifted his eyes. He already understood. His name was spoken. He rose, smooth, automatic. Years of repetition guiding the movement, only the meaning had changed. Wrists brought forward, steel circled them. A soft click settled into place. The corridor waited, long, unbroken, identical doors lined both sides. Concrete held its cold presence. He stepped forward. Officers kept pace beside him, calm, professional. Bootsteps echoed lightly, then faded behind them. Each stride carried him farther from the space that had contained his days. closer to the one prepared ahead. The end of the hall approached. A final door stood there. Light spilt outward. Inside, everything stood arranged. Clean lines, order, precision in every detail. Scott Hain lay guided to the gurney. He sat, lowered himself back. The ceiling offered nothing to hold on to. Straps came next. Across his chest, around his arms, secured at his legs. Each one fastened with care, removing any remaining freedom of movement. His arm extended outward. A technician prepared the line. Steady hands, focused attention. The room grew still. Voices softened. Movement slowed to a near standstill. All elements in position. A signal passed. The sequence began. At first, nothing obvious shifted. Then, breathing eased. Shoulders loosened. The tension that had held his frame for years began to slip away. Gradual, quiet. The change moved through him in stages, subtle yet clear. Those present watched without expression. Time stretched, moments passed in silence until everything settled. No motion remained, only a body lying still, and a room built for endings. Inside the chamber, the process began. At first, no visible change, just the same rise of his chest, and the fall that followed. But slowly something shifted. The rhythm softened. Each breath came lighter than the last. His chest lifted, then lowered. Again, but slower. The space between each breath began to stretch. The room didn't move. No one spoke. All attention stayed on that single motion, the rise and the fall, until the rise didn't come back. The chest lowered one final time and stayed there. Still. A pause settled over everything, not long but enough to be felt. Then a doctor stepped forward, a stethoscope placed carefully against his chest. Listening, waiting. Seconds passed in complete stillness. Then a small nod. A watch lifted. A time spoken into the room. Written down immediately. No reaction followed, only the quiet shift from a living presence. And with that, Scott Hain was pronounced dead. One more entry added to the record. The paperwork would continue. The arguments wouldn't. Scott Hain's case was over. Scott Hain was executed on April 3, 2003. 8 months later, the Supreme Court ruled that executing juvenile offenders was unconstitutional. 8 months. Robert Lambert, his co-defendant, had his sentence commuted to life. He is still alive today. If this case stayed with you, the question worth sitting with isn't whether the law was right. It's whether 8 months is the difference between justice and something else entirely.